Here's a question for you. When is a Jeep not a Jeep? Well, I would say when it's a two-wheel drive, all-electric car that's not much bigger than a Super Mini. But before I get into all that, please do subscribe to the channel and switch your notifications on so you keep up with our electrifying adventures. Because what's going to happen next will shock you. Was I really supposed to say that? So we've already tested the first all-electric Jeep on the international launch, but I wanted to get my hands on a right-hand drive version and try it for the first time here on UK roads. Because Jeep and I, we go way back. So I've owned a couple of Grand Cherokees, my dad's owned some Jeep Wranglers, and I've driven them all over the world. Up snow-covered mountains, over giant boulders, through the jungle, across a desert or two. So a two-wheel drive Jeep that shares the same bits as a Peugeot or a Vauxhall, I really wasn't convinced at all. But after spending some time with it here in the Cotswold countryside, I have to eat my words. I don't like doing that, but I do have to admit that it is really very, very good. Oh, damn. I was supposed to tell you that bit at the end, aren't I? Oh, sorry. Now let's rewind a bit and figure out what it is that I do like so much about this UK spec Jeep Avenger, and of course which bits I inevitably don't, because there are a few. So it's a Jeep, but it's one based on an updated version of the same underneath bits as cars like the Vauxhall Mokka, quarter electric, and Peugeot E208, all of which are siblings of the massive Stellantis parent company. Now, the most obvious thing about the Avenger is that it's not very big, as you imagine a Jeep would be. Look, it's Ginny-sized. In fact, it's actually a little bit smaller than me. So while it's a tiny bit taller than a Super Mini, it's actually not that much wider or longer. It's very, very compact. So it's not really an SUV at all, is it? Unless this could be a Super Mini utility vehicle. I like it. Have we just invented a whole new segment of car there? Now, it might be smaller than the Jeeps I'm familiar with, but when it comes to the styling, there's no mistaking what it is. It's a pure blocky Jeep, even down to that 7-slot grille at the front. I like the short overhangs, the large wheels with their slightly rounded wheel arches, and despite this being a hatch, it still has 200mm of ground clearance. Less, of course, than you'd normally get on a Jeep, but more than you'll find on a hatch. Now, the design team have had to consider aerodynamics to hit the range that it needed, but I do still think they've managed to pull off that boxy shape. And it does look, as I said, like a Jeep. Even the X feature in the lights, and that you'll find dotted around the interior and exterior design, is a throwback to that original Willys Jeep. In the UK, we'll get 3 grades: longitude, altitude and summit, and they all get a 51 kilowatt-hour battery. And a super efficient 152 brake horsepower motor that apparently gives a rather impressive 248 miles of official range. But we will be the judge of that. The grades are purely about equipment levels. They all get the same hardware, and they all get a heat pump of standard, which is just a brilliant thing for those cold winter days. Or if you live in the UK, those cold summer days too. They also all get 100 kilowatt DC charging capability. So that takes around half an hour to charge from 10 to 80%, which is okay-ish. They get okay-ish 11 kilowatt AC capability too. And they'll all take around 8 hours to charge on the normal 7 kilowatt home wall box. Now that range is going to drop a bit if you have the bigger optional wheels that do look great, rather than the modest 16 inches, so do be aware of that. Prices in the UK, they will start at £35,700 for the entry-level spec, heading up to just under £40,000 for this car, the top of the range Summit. When it comes to colour, we're going to get 7 choices in the UK, plus a whole heap of options for the outside, including different wheels from 16 to 18 inches, along with decal designs for the grille, the bonnet, the sides and the roof, as well as other bits, all provided by a company called Mopar, which is usually associated with V8 engined American cars. So let's take a meander around the interior, and of course what that boxy shape means is extra space, and you do have loads of headroom in here. In fact, the whole interior feels really nice and bright and light and spacious. You've got, what feel to be big windows in here. And I do love the way you get this big block of colour which is coded to match the exterior colour. It really breaks up the interior, just makes it look a bit more fun and vibrant. Now you get this 10.25 inch screen which is fitted across all models here in the centre, and then in front of you in the driver's eye is a smaller screen that's got all the information that you need to access while you're on the go. Worth noting that the models lower down the range get a slightly smaller screen, while the posher ones, including of course this Summit, get this 10-inch screen. So it is a bit smaller on some of the entry-level models. But what I do really love is, if you look here, I love the fact that you've got physical buttons as well. And they're just in a really nice position, kind of just off there by the steering wheel. As I was driving around, I found quite quickly that I just got used to them being there. I think it's so much safer than having to fiddle around in the menu. One thing I don't love quite so much though is the way that the gear selector is down here. It's just a bit irritating. And again, as I was driving around, I just found it slightly annoying. I think it's probably just because we're so used to either having it just here, right next to the driver, or somewhere around the steering wheel. But yeah, I didn't absolutely love that. What I do love though is the fact that there is loads and loads and loads of storage in here. In fact, Jeep reckon that there is twice the amount of storage that you would find in rivals. And I haven't counted it, but I would not want to say that they were wrong, because there seems to be loads. So let's walk through that. I like this shelf here, really useful for putting your phone. But this is the best bit, like a concertina storage compartment under there with your charging ports, room for a big massive cup holder. It's just a really useful little bin there. But this is the bit that I love, because I do loads of driving and I always like to have a cup of tea or coffee with me. It's actually quite narrow at the bottom, but it doesn't fit into many cars. But in here, you've got these little dividers, a bit like the dividers that you can get for kitchen drawers, or the drawers that your socks and your undies go in. And what you can do is just, make it the right size for you. I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's, definitely a big plus from me. I think also a plus are that a lot of the elements that you need to be washable or wipeable are, and that's really in line with the Jeep ethos, isn't it? Infotainment system. So it's a decent size screen. The interface isn't brilliant. Looks a little bit basic, but it does sync to both Android Auto and CarPlay, which I've been using today, and I've had absolutely no problems with either syncing it or with using it. It hasn't crashed at all, for example. I think overall they have done, put that back, one more thing, sorry, I forgot, the seats. So they've got loads of adjustment in them. So I'm quite small. I'm 5'4". I'm going to keep going up, right? So there I've got nice driving position for me. But I'm going to click my fingers, and a man who is much taller than me, who is over 6 foot, is going to appear in here. Over to you, Manos. It's also worth noting the fact that there's no standard reversing camera or adaptive cruise control on the lower spec models. You're going to have to option one of the various packs to get those. So if they're the kind of thing you're after, do choose carefully, because it might just be worth you going for a higher grade car in the first place. The only problem is for all that space in the front, it kind of dips off a bit when you get to the back. The doors don't open that wide, and the actual opening isn't also that wide. So I think it could be quite awkward getting in here if you are taller than my 5'4", or if you're reaching in to put kids into car seats and things. I mean, headroom is obviously okay because of that taller boxy shape. But let's look at legroom. So the front seat is set for my comfortable position as a passenger. It's just about all right. There is space for my feet to tuck under the seat. But this seat is set for Manos. I wouldn't want to be in that seat, would you? And then the problems continue here in the middle. Because of how the batteries are positioned in the Avenger, it means that you've got this sort of tunnel back in the centre, which I thought we got rid of with electric cars. So I think this is all right for children. Probably not as good for lanky teenagers. I'm not sure my 14-year-old would fit in here. And definitely not great for adults on longer journeys. And the other thing I would say is that it feels a bit basic in here. They've definitely thrown everything at the front. Loads of really handy storage. You do feel a bit shortchanged. Like, there's no cup holder, obviously. No door bins. You just got these little pockets on the back of the seats. So yeah, it definitely peaks in front. Space on here at the boot, however, isn't too bad. Look, yes, I know it is very compact, but this is a compact car. It's not much bigger than a Super Mini. And actually at 355 litres, I think it's all right. What is great though, is the fact that it's got this floor that just lifts up. You can shove your charging cable under there. And also if you flip this over, I'm not going to do it, pull it out and flip it over, you can wipe it all down, which makes it great if you're going to carry bikes or muddy scooters or even small buggies in here. And apparently, when the back seats are down, you can fit a full-size bike in here. I think it might be a bit of a squeeze, but it can be done. The other thing I really like is the way the tailgate opens up really nice and high. And because of its shape, you've got this good square opening with a nice load lip. I think this is far more practical than its size would lead me to believe. So, first time for Jeep on UK roads. And I've got to say, again, I'm more impressed than I thought I would be. It's got a really nice ride quality, actually. It's really well set up. And I do love the fact that you've got great visibility in here. Nice big openings in the windows, the windscreen in front of you. It feels nice and bright and airy as you're driving along. Now, the roads that I'm on at the moment, they're definitely not the smoothest in the world. That's what you get in the UK. You know, you never really know what's coming next. There's quite a few lumps and bumps on this, but actually the suspension is soaking them up quite nicely. Now, when you pick things up and get onto a nice stretch of A road like this, you're actually much more aware of a bit of road and wind noise creeping in. If you can hear that coming into the interior, bit of vibration coming through the floor. It's nothing I'd be too concerned about, and it definitely quietens down when you're driving around town though. So handling into a corner, well, it doesn't feel quite as squishy as its comfortable ride might suggest. You don't get any real body roll. You've got a nice direct steering. The brakes are nice and strong. I think where it's let down though is the regenerative braking. You can flick it into B mode. There's a button just down here, but it's not the most powerful system. It doesn't really give that true one pedal driving, which is a characteristic of electric cars that I really like. I think they could have done more than that. And even though the handling is tidy, this isn't by any means a fast car, particularly for an electric car. You've got 152 brake horsepower, but you only get that full figure if you're in sport mode or you're really hitting the throttle. Driving in normal mode, you only get 107 brake horsepower, and it drops to just 80 if you're in eco mode. But when you slow it down and get it into town, it's quite a different story. It does feel far more refined, very comfortable, and it's got an absolutely brilliantly small turning circle, which makes it really easy to manoeuvre around town and to put into tight parking spaces. If you fiddle with the modes, you can see extra ones for off-road, like mud, sand and snow, along with a hill descent control, and that basically changes the traction control settings. Look, it doesn't make this a full-on off-roader, but that extra ride height will probably get you to places that a normal Super Mini won't. Has the off-road capability suffered? Of course it has. You know, this isn't a Jeep in the typical sense. Although the torque that you get from electric is of course really suited to the control you need in off-road conditions. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of impact that four-wheel drive version has, because I think it should give lots more off-road capability. One thing we do have to address though is this. Listen to this. Can you hear that? It's the indicator. It's awful, absolutely dreadful, and it just makes me think of Nicola with her indicator sounds. There is no way that that noise is going to make it onto the Nicola Hume top 10 of indicator sounds by the end of 2023, is it? So I've just been pondering as I'm driving along, what word, if I had to choose one word, what would I choose to sum up the driving experience of the Jeep Avenger? And I think of Jeeps of old, it would probably have been rugged. That would have been the word that sprang to mind. But the word that I keep coming back to is fun. it is actually a really fun car to drive. You know, it's definitely more of the mini electric school than something like a Kia Niro electric, for example. And I think that's a really good thing. You know, we do want cars to be fun to drive. I don't care that it's not particularly quick. It doesn't really bother me. It's got enough power. It strikes a really good balance between comfort and fun and feeling a bit nippy in town. I think they've done a really nice job with it. Look, it's definitely not the Jeeps that you know of old, but why do they have to be limited to that? Why can't they do something different? And this is exactly what the Jeep Avenger is. And for me, actually, I think this is far more suited to the towns and the cities that they will be driven in the UK than a lot of those much bigger vehicles with their V8 engines. Bravo Jeep, it's a bold thing to do, and I think you've pulled it off. All UK Avengers come with a deal from Octopus Energy for public charging, giving one-tap access to loads of different rapid chargers. And you can also option having an Ohmie charger fitted at home as part of the deal, which does make it easy. Not familiar with the Ohmie charger? Then do head over to our charging channel at electrifying.com, where you can find expert reviews on all the chargers on the market. Should we talk WLTP range? This is the spec sheet for the Jeep Avenger Summit, and it's a claimed range of 249 miles. So we've been for a little drive into the application drawer. It's a bit fiddly, this, to be honest, but where is it? Not Climate Energy. There you go. Oh, 4.1. So doing the maths on that, that means we're actually getting real world driving range of about 220 miles. If we were getting the full range, that would need to be up at 4.6. Considering that this hasn't been that long a drive, only been out in it for a couple of hours, and there's been a lot of stop-start driving on different roads, I'm actually quite impressed with that. But we're going to reserve judgment until we've spent longer in this car. But yeah, I think that is off to a pretty good start. Like I said at the start, I was quite sceptical about a small two-wheel drive, all-electric car with this badge on it. It's just not what I expect from the brand, and probably not what you expect either. But having spent some time in it properly here in the UK, I am really impressed. Look, it's not the big 4x4 that the brand built its image around, but it is a useful, thoughtful, just great little electric car that also looks chunky and cute and fun, which is something that I do think we need more of on our roads. Look, this is a perfect car for town, but I also wouldn't be upset about doing longer journeys in it either. Overall, I think it's a very impressive package. After all, they are the masters of reinvention, and they are reinventing themselves for the electric age. And if you want to keep up with Jeep's journey into electric, do make sure you subscribe to the channel, because if you're into electric cars, as I say, this is the place to be. So do let us know in the comments what you think of Jeep's all-electric Avenger. And if you want to know more about any of the competition, then do head over to electrifying.com, where we have all the information you need in one place and where you can even book a test drive.